All right, we are in front of Half Price Books in downtown Austin, Texas. And we're gonna go in for an episode of What's in My Bag, where we get to find out what is most interesting. All right, come on. All right, occult books. Are we gonna find anything good here? Most occult books really suck. What counts as a good book? I've interviewed Timothy Wiley on the show. Timothy Wiley is a guy who lived in New Mexico, and he originally was a member of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which was a Scientology splinter group in the 60s that developed a really interesting cosmology of four gods: Lucifer, Christ, Satan, and Jehovah, that represented the four quadrants of the human personality. They got really nutty. I actually worked on a book about the process called Love, Sex, Fear, Death that came out from Feral House. Definitely worth checking out. Really interesting group. But Timothy Wiley was one of the main members. He was educated at Oxford, joined the process in the 60s, and then ended up moving to, after the process ended, moving to America, where he got really into ketamine. And when I say really, I mean he told Genesis and Lady J that it doesn't get good until the 100,000th time of injecting it. Please don't repeat that or do that. But then he got really into PCP, and he was convinced he could talk to aliens, dolphins, and extraterrestrials on ketamine, but really on PCP. Interesting guy. All right, we got the standard anti-Masonic conspiracy stuff. Oh yeah. Does anyone remember these? These were awesome. This was the whole encyclopedia set of the supernatural, and I remember reading these in the library, the school library in elementary school, and here we go, see Rider-Waite Tarot, and seeing all this stuff for the first time, and it, was pretty mind-blowing in third grade. The idea that there might be this other world out there. The question everybody asks is like, what if it's real? What if some of it is actually real? But of course, it's just basic stuff, palm reading, stuff like that, Nostradamus. But super interesting for an elementary school kid. There was an earlier series called Man, Myth, and Magic in the 70s that some of you may remember. Damien Eccles, Angels and Archangels. I actually haven't read this. I may pick this up because I haven't read this. Definitely going in my bag. Freya Aswin. Now there's a name I haven't heard in a long time. This is going to go in my bag. Freya Aswin was one of the primary people of the chaos magic movement in the 80s and then on into the 90s, and she is one of the most prominent practitioners of the Northern tradition and runes. Interesting person. Definitely has been an Odin worshiper for a long time. What else we got? Martin Booth, A Magic Life, Crowley. This is actually the only biography of Crowley that I don't have, so I might get it just cause. The hell is this? Liber Chthoniya. It's edgelord, super dark shit. What is this? I don't know. It looks super spooky. It's kind of the interesting thing about shopping at used stores. You'll find stuff that's just bizarre and that you may never see ever again. The Magic of White Rich Witchcraft. What the hell is this? Research Institute of Cosmobiology. Mind dominating the four elements. That looks awesome. Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Now that's a book I haven't seen in a long time. Fritz Spengmeyer was a conspiracy researcher in the early 90s that was considered to be the real deal. And he was kind of pushed to the sideline by all the goofballs like Alex Jones and David Icke, who kind of took up that field. But this was considered to be like, people actually thought it was quite frightening and legit. What else we got? Ceremonial Magic, Arthur Waite. That's pretty cool. That's an old I wouldn't necessarily call it a classic, but it's a well-known book. The Gnome Grimoire, Magical Workings with Nature Spirits, $100. Okay, interesting. Never heard of that. W. Butler, great writer on magic that's now been forgotten. But from the 70s, great writer though. Check this out. I really hope that people who watch this channel remember these. I loved these when I was a kid. These were kind of like Choose Your Own Adventure style books, but in between, they were Dungeons and Dragons, so in between Choose Your Own Adventure and a role-playing game where you had a character sheet and everything. These were an early way to kind of escape into another reality, and was much needed at that time. All right, let's take a look at the Eastern section, shall we? Okay, now here's a useful book, the I Ching. This is the best translation of the I Ching. If you do not have this book, you should absolutely 100% get it. It's not going in my bag because I already have it, but this is the Richard Wilhelm translation of the I Ching. If you do not have this book, this is possibly the most important book that you can get if you're into spirituality at all. If you could just get this book and study it for the rest of your life and get everything you need from it. In fact, that's what Crowley said at the end of his life. He would only study this if he had another life to live. This is a complete practical manual of how reality moves. One way to look at it would be a map of time, of the movements of time as 64 different hexagrams. Absolutely essential. Another one would be the Tao Te Ching. We have in graphic novel form here. That's actually kind of cool. Whoa there. I'm not sure what that adds to the Tao Te Ching, but there we have it. But yeah, I would definitely add Tao Te Ching. This is actually interesting to me. Most of that occult stuff over there was boring 20 years ago for me, and westernized teachings like this, Alan Watts, gag me please, Alan Watts, boring as hell. Not super interesting, but what is interesting is the Analects of Confucius. Now that's super interesting. I don't actually have a copy of the Analects, so that might be a good one. I'm just gonna go with the Dover edition, just because I don't know what the best translation is, so I'm just gonna go with this. Taoism is full of sorcery, and it's very, very interesting. Yeah, Taoism, the subtle, universal, and the integral way of life, by Taoist Master Ni Watching, if that's how that's pronounced. If it's not, I apologize. So Taoism, I Ching, Tao Te Ching, Analects of Confucius. Alice Bailey, telepathy, esoteric healing. Super interesting person, Alice Bailey. A little sinister. She was a student of theosophy who later went on to make her own version, which was super Christianized, but then later on went to found something called the Lucis Trust, which means Lucifer, and which has, I believe, a meditation room in the United Nations, the Luciferian occult group. Can't make it up. If you haven't read this, highly recommend it. I have read this. This is Whitley Strieber, famous for the book Communion and making gray aliens famous. This breaks down Whitley Strieber's alien abduction experiences, and when you read them, they actually sound much more like European folklore or fairy tales rather than, what people think of as alien abductions, like the caricature that has been made of his writing.
Attention customers, the time now is 7:57 and we will be closing in 3 minutes. I repeat, the time now is 7:57.
The bus waits for no man.
We will be closing in 3 minutes. We ask that any selections be taken to the registers at this time. We do open again tomorrow.
The Archons. When you actually look at Whitley Strieber's abduction experiences, they sound much more like European folklore, where he talks about like hairy creatures that look like Shrek, all this crazy stuff. And oddly enough, his experiences sound very much like John Dee's experiences, John Dee and Edward Kelly's experiences doing Enochian that I wrote about in my book John Dee and the Empire of Angels. And I later talked to Whitley Strieber about it because he had me on his podcast. And I told him about the very close overlaps, including hearing knocking sounds, having someone having their arm attacked, all this stuff. And that blew his mind because he had no knowledge whatsoever of Western, he knows it exists, but he didn't really know anything about Western magic and had never known that was a parallel and was very interested in that. So really interesting conversation that we had. Great book. Definitely recommend picking this up. Even if you're studied in this material, it will be pretty mind-blowing for you. So that's our first episode of What's in My Bag. First of many to come if people like this format. Until next time, lots of love. Hang in there.